For a
2 weeks
second.
in a row.
All right. Welcome to Are You Shitting Me? TMI, the podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Ron.
That fucking ray of sunshine happens to be my younger brother, Ron.
What's up?
I hope my wife's not listening because she told me I need to clean up my language.
Yeah, watch your fucking mouth, will you, Mike? This is a family environment.
And look, we already have one on.
Kenny Hall, what's up, brother, man? Hey, first off, in all seriousness, man, so sorry to hear about your dad. I definitely hope he starts feeling better, brother. Big prayers for you, man. Love you. Anything you need, just phone call away.
Boom.
Mike,
and I feel the fool. Can I ask? What?
He texted me earlier. He missed us the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you mind me saying can or not, but his dad has throat cancer.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah, so we're definitely always keep those in the prayer. So
absolutely.
So that being said, Mike, what do we got on the agenda tonight?
Well, I thought tonight what we might look at is possibly 1974 versus 2024, 50 years. What is the last? What did it look like 50 years ago? Because back then I was like 12, 13 years old. I don't know, Ronnie, you would have been what, 6, 7, 8 years old?
One.
And so I just thought, if you look back 50 years, 1974, as compared to now, is there any chance of getting even close to what we were? Or what will 2024 look like 50 years from now? How will they look back on this? And because one of the things that stuck out to me, Ronnie and I were talking a little bit before we started the podcast, is I asked, I said, you know what the number one song in 1974 was? It's funny because you and I were talking about, I'm going to give you a clue. This wasn't the number one song, but the number two song you mentioned last week in 1974.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. We talked about so many songs.
But you brought up one and we just thought.
Seasons in the Sun?
Seasons in the Sun.
Get out of here.
Number two for all of 1974. Terry Jacks. The number one song was Barbara Streisand, Memories.
Oh, yeah.
The Way We Were. Yeah.
Memories.
And so it's that song that just kind of tied in to my thought process of, there's a line in there where it says, could it be that it was all just so simple then, or has time rewritten every line? And
oh, yeah.
Could it be that it was just so simple? It wasn't so simple then. It was we still had problems. Look, in 1974, about the middle of the year, we had an actual recession.
Yes.
You had long lines at gas stations.
Gas stations, I remember that. Yeah.
Rationing gas. And so, so to think back, and for those that think, those that are 30 years old or so, saying, God, of course you guys can think back to those days because things were so much easier then. Bullshit. Things were not so much easier.
Well, it was easier for the time.
Everything. That to me is a cop-out statement. I love you, little brother, but
but it's a true statement, though. I mean, it's like when people
they're going to say that 50 years from now.
That's what I say. Exactly my point. So people down the road that are us doing this are going to say the same thing. Well, for our time, it was your time. But I agree with what you're saying. We had our difficulties for those times. That back we can look at it now, and you're kind of like, it really wasn't that bad. But back then, it was that bad. You had the Cuban missile crisis. You had the Berlin Wall coming down. You had the gas crisis. There are so many things that happened that are the stepping stones that kind of put us where we're at today. So yeah, was it bad? Yeah, but was it as bad as we thought it was now versus then? I don't think so.
Well, no, and the thing for me was it's almost equal to the point of when you think about the gas lines, when you think about Watergate. Nixon had to step down. Gerald Ford. Here's a funny one. Gerald Ford stepped into kind of a tough situation. We don't talk politics here, But I will tell you that if you go back and do some research, he actually sort of strengthened the economy in a relatively short period of time. But my point with this was going to be when you think about the music, when you think about the movies, Ronnie and I were talking before the podcast started. Do you know what the number one movie, the top grossing movie, 1974? This is going to blow your mind.
I said Star Wars, and I was wrong.
It wasn't Star Wars. It was actually Blazing Saddles, the top grossing movie of 1974. And Ronnie hit it right on the head. What'd you say?
We all know the favorite statement of that movie was, "The sheriff is a." Come on,
sheriff is a. What did he say? Oh, the sheriff isn't. He said the sheriff is near. My favorite one is when he pulls in town and gets up to the podium and says, "Excuse me, while I whip this out." And the crowd freaks, right? But here's the thing about you have the top grossing movie of 1974 is Mel Brooks, Blazing Saddles. You know what the number 4 movie that year was?
What?
Frankenstein, Mel Brooks. What is this telling you? This is telling you back then we weren't wimps. We weren't.
Comedy was a great thing, man.
Play those today. We all know Blazing Saddles ain't playing today.
Right? No, not in any movie theater anyway.
But here's the other thing, though. The top movie, and I'm doing this off memory, the top among the top 10 grossing movies of 1974, Blazing Saddles, Frankenstein, and then it goes the other direction. I'm trying. Was it Irwin Allen? Irwin Allen was a movie producer, and he was responsible for 2 of the top 10 movies, Towering Inferno.
Oh yeah, dude,
and
I remember
Earthquake.
that.
Earthquake was in the top 10, and the other ones were like Kill for Thrill movies. Death Wish, I think, was one of them. Godfather 2 was also in there. But and I was thinking about the movie Earthquake. It's funny because there was and you guys will have to help me, a theater in Rustic Hills, where the Rustic Hills shopping mall was or is. There was a movie theater there, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but that's where we went to go see Earthquake. And what was funny is they promoted the movie as having real life feel, like whenever the earthquake would happen, you were supposed to, the theater was supposed to shake or whatever.
Yeah.
Here's what it was.
Dude, you and I are on the same. I hate it because we're the same wavelength. I was gonna talk about this exact same thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
No, they put towers of speakers in like every corner of the theater, and whenever the earthquake scene came on, whoever's running the projector, I'm sure, had a cue card or something, and just rammed the audio up as far as they could, and it was just sound coming out of those speakers.
I remember going to that movie, Mike, as a kid. Let's see, 6, 9, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like maybe 7 years old at the time, but I remember going to that movie, and I remember this is back when kind of not really Dolby surround sound, but it was that version of it back in the 70s. Yeah, right. surround sound Earthquake. Yeah, I remember sitting on top of one of those speakers. I mean, this thing was 6 foot wide, 8 feet tall, and we would climb up around the balcony. We'd sit on top of the speaker, and that thing go up here like, I mean, you're just bouncing you all over the place. So yeah, it's so funny though, dude. I was going to go that same direction with the Earthquake movie.
But when you think back to it, though, I mean, among the top 10 movies, some of them were kind of. You look back at them now, and they're kind of cheesy.
They were dumb.
But yeah, Irwin Allen gave you Towering Inferno, Earthquake. He also did the original Poseidon Adventure with Gene Hackman and Shelley Winters and others in it.
That was pretty good. I liked that one.
I didn't mind Poseidon Adventure. Earthquake I thought was kind of cheesy. Towering Inferno I thought was okay.
It was cheesy. Stop it. It was cheesy.
Little cheesy, a little weird.
Well, the things I remember, of course, you're like 20 years older than I am, but I remember some things like gas prices, because like today, I look at, like I filled up today, And I don't know where you guys are at or what your gas prices are, but we're averaging about $3.93, $4 a
All right.
gallon for gas here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I remember back in the day, paying 75 cents, 89 cents, always under $1 a gallon. Because anytime you gave your buddies a ride, it was like, so yeah, I need $3 for gas. I mean, shit, you asking me for $3 for gas now, your car's going to laugh at you as you put the $3 in, but it's just it's a sign of the times. I mean, a dollar in 1974 versus now is worth almost $6.
Well, what the average gas price in 74 was, I think I read it was 55 cents.
Yeah.
Now, being part of, you'll appreciate this, having worked in, because of your real estate aspects, your real estate acumen. The cost of an average house in 1974 at the beginning of the year was just under $28,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once the recession hit, that number moved up to 35.9.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the average cost? Well, it's going to be a little deeper in Vegas, but I read today, according to one source, the average cost of an average family home today runs anywhere from $488,000 to $520,000.
Yeah, it's about a 545 to 560% increase from then.
Yeah. And so, is that inflation? Is that lumber, materials, labor? I mean,
everything. It has to be an accumulation of all. You have inflation, you have supply and demand. I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with in Vegas right now is supply and demand. I mean, you only have so many houses on the market, and we're in the Las Vegas Valley. We're 2.4 million people right now, and we have 3,000 to 5,000 people a month moving here, and we're going to run out of space eventually. But real estate, we'll talk about that part eventually. But yeah, I mean, and the one thing you and I, Mike, talked about before we went live on air was you could buy a brand new car for under $2,000. I mean, could you imagine? What? Could you imagine the cars that we were buying back then for $1,500 to $2,000? What some of those cars are worth now? Probably.
Oh my Lord!
$60,000 easily.
My '69 El Camino, I'd give. Well, I'd give my arm for that thing.
No, just say it right, Mike. You'd give your left nut for that thing to be back, and I would give your left nut to have that car.
You'd give my left nut for. Well. No, I was telling you before we went live. Carolyn and I, we've been watching a lot of the old Price is Right game shows. And it's funny because the ones they did in the 70s, first of all, the colors are horrible. But it's funny because when they give away a car, I've seen everything from a Vegas station wagon to a 73 Chevy Nova. Now, the funny thing is when the Vega gets given away, I laugh and I just think, in a couple of years, you're going to be sorry you won that car. The Nova, I'm thinking, tell me you still have that car. Tell me you still have that car.
Right.
Another one was, and this is later episodes, probably 79, 80. And I'm not a Jeep guy, but every once in a while they give away this Jeep Laredo. And I'm thinking, God bless, I would drive that thing today.
Hey, Ken, what was the car you used to drive back in the day? There's a story behind this, just so everybody knows. Is anybody else mentioning this, Dave? I'm sorry, Ken.
Good thing you've only been married. Well, I hope you've only been married twice.
Yeah, Ken knows what car I'm talking about. But hey, Mike, do you remember, Mike, when I forget what the situation? There you go. 1973 Dodge Dart Sport. So, Ken, I'm going to give you the opportunity right now, as I'm telling this other story, to tell me why that car is important to you and I. So, Mike, what was it? I think you and I were going through, I think it was Dad's taxes or something, or whatever, financial statements from back when we lived on Debonair Circle, and we found his tax returns for one of the years when we were in Debonair Circle. Do you remember that? Do you remember the dollar? I don't know what it was, but do you remember the dollar amount that was on that?
No, it doesn't.
What he made that year?
Well, yeah, probably something like about $11,000.
Yeah, I remember it was like under $15,000.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because I think about that now, and it just, I don't know. Excuse my language. I don't know how the fuck we did it. To be honest with you, I have
I'm
no
telling
idea how we
you,
did it.
Dad told me once on one of the bike rides, and this blew my mind. And I don't know how we ended up talking about it, but he said, son, do you know what I was making back in the day when we were living on Debonair? I said, no, no
Scary.
clue. And he said he thought he hit the big time the first time he did his returns, and he made more than $10,000. And I thought, are you shitting me? Seriously?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah.
Are you shitting me?
Hey, look, going back to, we're talking about 50 years ago, and this would have been about that time.
Yeah.
Do you know what the average median income was per household? The average wage earner, a single wage earner was making just under $11,000.
$10,000, yeah. Combined
household was making an average of about 27 to 28,000.
Yeah.
Minimum wage, $2 an hour in 1974. Yeah. So yeah, here Kenny is answering your question.
No. Hey, fucker, it was one headlight. My story, I'm telling it.
I didn't know until I was across town truck.
But Ken, there you go. I'm saying, make sure you tell everybody I made it up to you. So I was living in Vegas, and I flew to the Springs, and we were having Ken and I met for breakfast at the Northside Cafe. If you've ever been there, everybody knows where it is. But I brought him a Christmas present in a box, and I literally bought him a headlamp for a 1973 Plymouth Duster.
I thought it was a Dodge Dart.
Oh, whatever the fuck it was. It was a whatever. You crushed my Coors Light beer can hood ornament. Ken, you see the tattoo on my arm? You see the
atonement?
That's right.
Because I'm feeling really bad about the shit I did.
I'm sorry, Ken.
Oh Lord! But yeah, so when you think about it, and the reason why I thought about all this morning after I read that news piece, I just started thinking about here we are in 2024. Things like Blazing Saddles, we all know that wouldn't play today. One of the funniest movies ever made. I mean, wouldn't you agree? You talk about a movie filled with one-liners.
That and Mike, one of my favorite movies, which I don't know if it's a Mel Brooks movie or not, but it sounds like it would be, was Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein, that was the number 4 movie that year.
Oh my God. To this day, I watch it religiously at least once a month. It's those are some nice knockers. Oh, I thank you.
See, Brooks was that way. Brooks was just an absolute.
You want to go for a roll in the hay? Rolls in the hay. Rolls in.
Well, the other one was Cloris Leachman. What was hers?
Frau Blucher.
I'm trying to think of what. Yeah.
Hey, Ken, I love you too, man. Thanks. Yeah, Frau Blucher, man. That was that dude. That movie. You talk about the king of one-liners. It was, it was like, it's not Igor, it's Igor. It's not Frankenstein, it's Frankenstein.
Until the end, but yeah, Franken.
The sheriff is near.
Hey, Dan, how are you? Dan's a friend of mine, and I've known Dan for a few years now. In fact, Dan, you and Dan have something in common. Dan, do you still have the kettle corn biz? I mean, I'm talking to you, Ron.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. See, because I was going to call you because Dan had a. You know what the German Bavarian nut deal is? You do like candy. I almost bought one from Dan.
Yeah.
So anyway, but no, Dan is he's also something of a just a history buff. I really appreciate if you get a chance, just go find him on Facebook.
So what you're saying is Dan is a history nut.
He is, well, Dan's just a freaking nut, is what he is. Terry Garr was hot. I'm sorry.
Oh, dude, she was the shit back then.
Terry
Dude.
Garr was, for young men our age, Terry Garr was.
I think that's the reason why I still watch it.
Yeah. Rolling the hay. Yes, ma'am. Please.
Wasn't the hump on the other shoulder? That's
Well, the other one was, hey, Igor, where did you get this brain?
It's Abby.
It's
Abby
Normal. Abby Normal.
What? You got me an abnormal brain? Yes, and the song I always sing is, you'll know this. Sweet mystery of life, at last I found you.
God.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, but see, there you go. We're proving our point. This movie, Young Frankenstein,
movie.
and Blazing Saddles.
Yes, Karen, sort of. Pipe down.
In the top 4 movies of 1974, and you couldn't air them today.
Oh God,
you couldn't put them in a theater. It would cause, people's heads would explode. And yet here we are.
There's some things that I would like to talk about right now, and it's just it would open such a huge can of bullshit. It's because that's not what we're doing here. We're fun, loose, and fancy free, and that's kind of how I want to keep it. But there's some shit going on in the world that we need some Mel Brooks stuff to bring everything back into.
Amen, brother.
Because
it's like, Mel Brooks.
It's like people are just so uptight, man.
I thought that's where Seth MacFarlane might move into, because I put Seth in kind of that Mel Brooks mode,
sure,
with a bit of a twist.
Dude, he's right on the line.
Seth is American Dad, Family Guy,
Ted,
the Cleveland Show. I wasn't a big.
I wasn't a huge fan of the Cleveland Show either.
But he's done some great movies. Seth MacFarlane is just. I used to tell people. The thing I really hate about Seth MacFarlane is, and this is going to be, I always tell Carolyn, this is the gay in me coming out, shouldn't be that good looking and that damn talented. I hate that.
I can't argue with you.
He writes all the music. He writes every song you hear in anything. He wrote it. Here's another one, man. Shirley, you jest.
Stop calling me Shirley.
That's a whole different movie. Pick a bad time to put sniffing glue. Well, now you're onto a different movie.
Come on, Dan.
You're onto a different movie. Which one? That's Airplane.
Yeah.
That's one of the airplanes.
There's no gambling at Bushwood, sir.
That's Caddyshack.
Amen. But anyway.
Unfortunately, Seth is way too woke. Ken, you're right. And that's the downside. Look, we don't do politics, which, by the way, Kenny, welcome out of jail.
Yeah, welcome back, Ken. How was your stay?
We need to enjoy Kenny while he's out of Facebook jail, because he'll be back in there soon enough.
Probably by tonight.
But keep speaking the truth, baby. Keep speaking the truth. But yeah, you're right. Seth is way too woke. But I think he's woke with, like I always tell people, I'm an open-minded conservative. I think Seth is woke but open-minded, where people like Mark Ruffalo or whatever his name is, or even Meathead, Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
They're woke without the opportunity to, have facts presented. So look, so far as the wokeness goes, that's somebody else's battle. That's not mine.
No.
All we're here to tell you about is things like the movies we're talking about.
How funny it was to live in the 70s and 80s.
And it was amazing. But when you see things, and just a few weeks ago, Ron, we were talking about TV shows.
Yeah.
The shows that probably couldn't air today. Jeffersons is one.
All in the Family. Yeah.
All in the Family, definitely.
Yeah. But here's my thing, Mike. And again, when I was in the 70s, I was in my early years, maybe 10 years old and late 70s. And one of the things that I can remember the most of was, and we've talked about it before, but it's just something that just sticks in my mind, was it was all about camaraderie. It was all about, your neighbors and your friends and connecting and communicating. And I was telling one of my employees this the other day, when you grow up in a small town, and let's face it, we all grew up in Colorado Springs, and back then it was a small town in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it's one of those things where you could be driving down the street, I don't care where you're at, and you did this number to the person driving by you. What would they do, Mike?
Wave right back at you.
Yeah. You do that shit in Vegas, and they're like, and I'm just like, dude, I'm just trying to say hi, but yeah, and it's like it starts road rage, and but that's the one thing that I take from being back in those days, because I grew up with our dad or stepdad Archie, and I also grew up with my dad Dell, and he lived in some even smaller areas than where we grew up in, and I think I crave that small town environment. I crave that belonging that you felt back then. And I think it's one of the biggest things that's missing in today's day and age. And I fear for the young people of today's day and age on what they're going to have to go through, because they're not going to have that.
No, they won't have it. And that's directly in line with where, what we talk about almost every week on this podcast. And, we'll start it with a theme, but we'll always divulge or, steer off in this direction. The small town feel that's another thing I think is just grown dormant in this country. And I'm not sure why. You were the one that said it. I think it was Michelle's uncle Jack that said, the world needs more, farm
kids.
We need more farm kids. There's the problem. But the small town feel, getting that from your neighbor, that is just pure hatred, and that's hatred. This is at the end of the day, Ron. You know what? When we go back to 1974, that puts me in the mindset of what I call the debonair days. That's the old debonair gang. And you know what we didn't do back then? I don't remember anybody on that street teaching. We didn't know what the fuck color was. We didn't know what gay, straight, or anything else was. We didn't even know what hate was, because we weren't taught what it was. We weren't.
Hey man, you want to play? Great.
That's just it, man. Look, if we're getting up a game of whatever,
we need a
play. We're taking anybody. It's like, hey, man, can you throw a ball? You're on my team, kid. Come on, because I needed to balance out the teams. But that's
one of the best things about that, Mike, is, and we can bring this all the way into 45 or 50 years later. We could have had our we could have had we've had our disagreements back then and the things that happened, but you know what? A lot of us are still friends to this day. I just don't see that really being the case in today's day and age. And on that note, Ken, I gotta tell you, I was watching this documentary on the Jerry Springer Show the other day, and one of the girls who was one of the associate producers, and she goes, all I remember back from those days being an associate producer fresh out of college was we watched a lot of TV and smoked a bunch of shitty weed.
Well, there you go. Hey, Kenny.
Pot was bad. Yeah, amen. I channel Archie Bunker. Yeah, I think we all kind of channel the Archie Bunker these days, man. I mean, I try not to, but it's hard. It's hard not to, man.
Could have 30-30. Oh shit, dude. Dan would. I mean, I know you. Dan's the same age I am, and Ronnie and I have talked about this on this podcast before. Trucks with gun racks actually had guns in them
in high school.
Because we weren't afraid of anybody shooting us.
Yeah.
So, it was obviously a different time, but I think an awful lot of it is, and I don't think it's indoctrination by a long shot. I think it's just taught division, taught hate.
It's a learned trait.
Yeah, it's somebody had to learn this, and whatever the source of the learning is, we can argue. It comes from the home, it comes from peers, it comes from media. It's coming from somewhere. But that's the difference from now back to when we were younger. And I'm using the 74 as an example. We didn't have all this BS back then. But then again, like I said, we weren't taught this stuff in the home. I will tell you, when we were growing up, we understood. We didn't recognize color. Sure, we knew what black and brown and white was, but it didn't matter to us.
Yeah.
Respect was respect. When it came to hate or dislike or anything else, I remember one time I had think I got in a fight and said something about I really hate that guy, and Daddy took me downstairs to my room, shut the door, and I thought, oh, he's going to kill me. And he sat me on the bed. He said, son, I'm going to make this real easy. Never say the word hate. You can dislike somebody, you can dislike something, but never, ever say you hate anybody. And he walked off. And to know my dad, to know our father, that was mind blowing to me. I can cry right now because of that. Because our dad was a mean son of a bitch. He was the man. The whole fucking neighborhood was scared of him. But when he did that to me, I thought, holy shit.
Mike, you did something similar, not to that extent, but I was a young man and maybe 10, 11, 12, maybe around that age. And around the corner going down the other side of Debonair Circle at the very bottom right-hand side of a house, there was an elderly couple that lived there. And I used to go by and I'd mow their yard and shovel their snow and stuff like that, and I had come home late one afternoon, and Dad had asked me, he goes, where have you been, son? I'm like, oh, I was, down at those old people's house, helping them with their yard. Same thing. I got sat down. He goes, you know what, son? He goes, we do not refer to elderly people as old people. They're elderly, and they deserve the same respect that anybody else does. To this day, I don't call people old people.
Right.
Because of that.
He's been gone for 4 years. He still scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I agree.
But that gets us back to, I mean, it's a taught trait. It's something we learn in the home or we're learning it someplace. So back then, was it a simpler time? Yes and no. But was it a time where we were taught right from wrong, where we understood, yes, people can be different colors, look, you don't think gay and lesbian and all this other shit was around. Yes, it was around back then, but it wasn't shoved down your throat constantly. It wasn't on the news every freaking night. We understood. We understood all this, but we also understood we had to live. There wasn't a lot of fear in what we did. So you just went outside, you played, you lived your life, man. That's how we did it back then.
We're at 33 now, but I wanted to tell you, I was watching this lady. Actually, one of my employees sent it to me. This lady that was on a rant about growing up being a Gen Xer. She's like, I want to paraphrase this. We were 13 years old and we were smoking and drinking, and it depends on what you were smoking. By the time you were 16, you had a job. Your parents wanted kids; they just didn't want to see their kids, and they put you outside to play until the lights came on. Then you came inside, they fed you, you went to bed. You're to be seen, not heard. And nowadays you got, and I hate to say it, but you got freaking 30 or 40-year-olds living in their parents' basement that don't want to go outside and get a damn job because they don't have the mental skills to deal with people or to deal with life and in general. Back in our day, dude, it was fucking fight or flight, man. Either you were on your toes or you were on your ass, one or the other.
Yep. And did you feel entitled to anything when we were kids?
Not a fucking thing. I was so appreciative of anything I got when I was a kid because I didn't expect anything. And so when you got it, that just made it even better. And I'm sure everybody, I can almost guarantee anybody that's under the demographic or over the demographic of 40 years old can appreciate that statement because you didn't expect anything. Nowadays, there is so much entitlement from people, whether it be young or old, doesn't matter. Just so much entitlement in the world today that it's like, what the hell do we owe you?
So give me, because I know we're up against it, and there's still time for y'all if you want to just type something in real quick. So most everybody makes New Year's resolutions. Give me one or two that you've resolved for this year. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple of mine. One of mine is, I kind of want to, drop some pounds, get a little healthier. I want to be more conducive to calling on family. But here's the one that may shock a lot of people. I'm going to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. And Ronnie doesn't even know this, but you sort of were the impetus. I have one in my head. If y'all haven't guessed by now, our family dynamic is such that our mother was married 4 times, and we have a sister. I have a younger sister, an older sister for Ron, who has also a different dad. So I've had a theme in my head for many years. I was going to write a book called it and call it Growing Up Step by Step. So that book's still in my head. Here's the one I want to write this year, and you're going to love this one. It's going to be, hey, let's go outside and throw shit at each other.
Yes.
And I'm dead serious.
Amen, dude.
I'm already starting to scratch it out, but that's going to be the title of the book. There'll be a subtitle, but the title of the book is Let's Go Outside and Throw Shit at Each Other. Because we've already talked about a lot of this, have we not?
Amen.
What a
Dirt
great
time. Fights, BB guns. I mean, you name it, man.
We have thrown it at each other. Hell, you and I used to sit in a room and throw Lincoln logs at each other. Little army men. Remember those days?
I do. I remember the cousins being that we'd be in the basement out there on Debonair Circle down there and just hucking shit at each other from the fireplace to the staircase.
Better believe it, man. So that's the title of the book. It's been on my mind ever since we talked about it one time, and so there you go. That's what I want to do this year.
Well, I'm going to tell you, one of my resolutions this year, and I try to do the same thing every year, is just to be a kinder, gentler person, and my wife will probably chime in on this one, but I'm not always the nicest person in the world, although I try my best to be, but it could be a little taxing. So, there's an old saying, God gave us 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use all those accordingly.
Yep. Amen. Well, I hope you can be a nicer person.
Shut up.
I think you're nice.
And I will say my favorite statement, and I've said it before on here, man, if the world was blind, what a wonderful place it would be.
Amen. Let's all live like we're dogs.
Amen. 10 things I learned from my dog, Ed Milet. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It'll blow your freaking mind, man. So, hey, thanks for joining us. Hope you all had a happy new year. Glad to have you on our first podcast for this year. Let's get this thing growing up a little bit more. Some more folks coming on. We love all you guys. Mike, love you.
Love you, bro.
And just I'm looking forward to next week. I honestly have to tell you from the bottom of my heart, dude, I look forward to this every week. Not only because it strengthens our relationship, but it helps us to give some of the fruits of our past to the people that are up and coming.
Gotcha, brother. So until next week, love you.
Love you guys.
Bye.